partnership and innovation to end extreme poverty. My name is Sleman Musa Sleman, Global Member, Mayor Foundation here in Nigeria, and I will be your moderator for this session. Our discussion today focuses on the extremely important question: how do we prepare learners not only to understand the changing climate, but also to live, work, innovate, and lead in a climate affected world. We will therefore explore the connection between education, climate resilience, innovation, economic opportunity, and poverty reduction. To begin this important conversation, I would like to invite our keynote speaker, Mrs. Tahiyat Naim. Sorry for the pronunciation, Tahiyat Naim City, founder and the chief executive officer, Climate, Nature, and Land Nexus from Pakistan to share her perspective. And before we start, it is my open question. When we talk about climate smart education, what should this actually mean for the learner sitting in the classroom today? So, Ma, you can start your own perspective. From your own perspective, we want to hear. Uh, when we talk about climate smart education, what should this actually mean for the learner sitting in the classroom today? This is my speaker.
Okay. Thank you so much. And Assalamu alaikum, and a very good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to everyone joining us from different parts of the world. Distinguished guests, fellow speakers, policymakers, educators, researchers, youth leaders, and colleagues. It is a privilege to join you at the Climate Action and Education Forum 2026, and I would like to thank the MAI Foundation and the organizing team for bringing us together for this important conversation on climate smart education, preparing the learners for the future. Actually, I have prepared a presentation and I have sent it to the organizers. If you could please display that presentation, it could be very good for us.
Pardon?
I have shared my presentation with the MEI Foundation's email. Can you please display that presentation?
Okay, yes, sir, please. I did not get the presentation. Please, can you bring the presentation about? I only have the questions here too. Okay. Good.
Sent it to the MEI Foundation. So if you could, yes, please. Okay. So yes. So okay. As this session is about the climate smart education and preparing learners for the future, I would like to begin with a simple thought that the learners sitting in our classrooms today will spend their adult life in a climate change world. So our responsibility is no longer simply to teach them about climate change. We must prepare them to understand it, respond to it, adapt to it, build solutions, and ultimately shape a more resilient and sustainable future. That is what I would like to explore with you today. And I made a very brief presentation for all of you for your considerations, and I hope it will benefit you all. So moving on, I want to structure this conversation around 6 very practical questions. First, what does climate smart education actually mean for a learner today? And second, what knowledge, skills, and mindsets will learners need in a rapidly changing and climate affected world? And the third is, how do we move beyond simply adding climate change as another topic in the curriculum and instead rethink how schools themselves operate? And fourth, how do we connect with education, with green jobs, livelihoods, and poverty reduction? And fifth, how do we ensure this transformation reaches the learners or most vulnerable, including those experiencing poverty, displacement, and climate disasters? Sorry. And finally, what can education leaders actually do within the next 12 months or so? I want to move from definition to implementation and ultimately to an action plan. Next slide, please. Talking about the climate change, as we say that why does this conversation matter now? Because the classrooms are already on the front line. In 2024 alone, extreme climate events disrupted the schooling of approximately 242 million students across 85 countries. And around 128 million of those learners were in South Asia. And for those of us from Pakistan, these statistics are not abstract. During the catastrophic floods of 2022, more than 26,000 schools were damaged or destroyed, disrupting education for approximately 3.5 million children. And think about what that means. We have a generation that is being asked to learn about climate change while simultaneously living through its consequences: floods, extreme heat, drought, displacement, and livelihood disruption. Because this year in our country, in Pakistan, there was early summer vacations because of the heat waves. And so the question is no longer should education systems adapt to climate change? They have. The real questions are how quickly can they adopt, how effectively and critically, who gets protected first? Next slide, please. So, what exactly do we mean by climate smart education? For me, it cannot simply inserting another chapter on climate change into a science textbook. Climate smart education should treat climate change as a lens through which learners understand the world around them. And it needs three dimensions. First, the cognitive dimension. Learners need to understand climate science, what is changing, why it is changing, what the consequences are, and what solutions are available. Second is the socio-emotional dimension, because it's very important. We need to develop resilience, empathy, responsibility, and hope. Because if we teach young people only about catastrophic climate impacts without giving them pathways for action, we risk producing anxiety rather than agency. And third is the behavioral dimension. Students should have opportunities to translate knowledge into real action, whether through water conservation, ecosystem restoration, and disaster preparedness, community engagement, or green entrepreneurship. And the baseline is tell us why this matters. Many curricula still inadequately address climate change, and many teachers do not feel sufficiently prepared to teach it. So climate smart education must move us from simply knowing about climate change to being capable of responding. Next slide, please. Okay. Not just what to know, what to do with it. That brings me to an important distinction that the education system traditionally tasks what should students know, because we are all being talked about what's global warming, how is it affecting, how is it moves, etc., etc. But a climate effective world requires more than this. So what students should be able to do with that they know? I would highlight 6 capabilities. First, systems thinking. A learner needs to understand that climate, forest, water, food, biodiversity, livelihoods, and poverty are interconnected. Second, data and evidence literacy. Young people are entering a world of satellite imagery, environmental sensors, climate models, artificial intelligence, and enormous amounts of information. They need to know how to interpret evidence and how to distinguish evidence from misinformation. Third is collaboration and negotiation. I see this repeatedly in international climate negotiations. Climate solutions involve different interests, priorities, and perspectives. The ability to listen, negotiate, and build consensus is therefore itself a climate skill. And fourth is the adaptive problem solving. Climate change creates uncertainty. There will not always be a textbook answer for every flood, drought, or heat wave. And fifth is emotional resilience. We need to transform climate concern into agency rather than paralysis. And sixth is the green livelihood skills. We need to train our people. Restoration, renewable energy, sustainable agriculture, water management, environmental data, and resource management are not simply, environmental activities. They are increasingly economic opportunities. And next slide, please. So, how do we turn those competencies into actual learning? One practical approach is a simple 5-step cycle. Observe, investigate, design, act, reflect, and measure. Imagine students identify water scarcity in their community. They first observe the problem. Then they investigate it, collecting data, interviewing community members, perhaps mapping water availability. Next, they design possible solutions. But importantly, they compare those solutions according to cost, feasibility, inclusion, and environmental impact. This is what is required. Then they act, perhaps through a small intervention, prototype, campaign, or proposal to school management. And finally, they measure what happened. Did it work? What failed? What should change next time? Notice what has happened. One climate project has simultaneously taught science, mathematics, geography, communication, digital literacy, civic participation, and teamwork. That is the difference between a climate lesson and a climate smart learning. So, next slide, please. Okay. But even excellent classroom projects are not enough. Climate smart education requires a whole school transformation. UNESCO's whole institution approach helps think about 4 dimensions. First, governance. Climate resilience needs to appear in school policies, leadership priorities, budgets, rather than depending on one enthusiastic teacher. Second, facilities and operations. The campus itself can become part of the curriculum. Students can examine energy consumption, water use, green spaces, heat exposure, and disaster preparedness. And the third is teaching and learning. Climate should not be confined to one science lesson. It can appear in mathematics, geography, economics, civics, language, and technology. And fourth, community engagement. Parents, local government businesses, farmers, civil society, and community leaders should become part of the learning ecosystem. And because climate education should not end when a child walks through the school gate, the process should go on. Next slide, please. So we also need to be honest about where we are. We need to talk about the gaps. Only 38% of the countries have national level law, policy, or strategies specifically focused on climate change education. Teacher confidence remains another major barrier. Fewer than 4 in 10 teachers report confidence in teaching the severity of climate change, and curriculum coverage remains inconsistent. But there is another challenge behind all of this. That is finance. Low and middle income countries already face an enormous education financing gap, so climate education cannot simply become another unfunded mandate. And in Pakistan, we also have institutional opportunities to strengthen coordination, including through the broader Action for Climate Empowerment Agenda under the UNFCCC. And the important point is this: most of the gaps are not impossible to solve. They are governance, capacity, implementation, and financing problems, which means they can be addressed. Next slide, please. And this also brings us directly to the theme of this forum, that how does climate smart education contribute to ending extreme poverty? Through 3 pathways: skills, resilience, and opportunity. The World Bank has found that each additional year of schooling is associated with increased climate awareness. But awareness alone is not enough. Green transitions create economic opportunity only when education and training systems keep pace with changing labor market demand. And that means connecting secondary education and TVET, technical and vocational education training areas such as restoration, renewable energy, sustainable agriculture, resource management, and other locally relevant green livelihoods. So education also strengthens resilience. And a household that understands climate risk, has diversified skills, and has access to information is better positioned to prepare for and recover from climate shocks. Uh, Talking about Pakistan's restoration experience illustrates this broader opportunity particularly well, and climate action can create livelihood pathways, especially for rural youth and women when learning and skills development are deliberately connected to those opportunities. So, climate smart education should not be seen as a cost center. It is an investment in human capital, resilience, and economic opportunity. Next slide, please. Okay. So there's an important justice question here. What happens to learners who are already being left behind? Today, hundreds of millions of crises affecting school age require urgent educational support, and climate change intersects with poverty, displacement, conflict, gender inequality, and digital exclusion. So, education systems must be designed for disruption, not simply for ideal conditions. That means continuity of learning plans. It means temporary learning spaces when necessary. It means catch-up curriculum. It means offline and remote options. And critically, it means prioritizing the most climate vulnerable learners. Girls are particularly vulnerable when disaster disrupt education because household pressures, care responsibilities, safety concern, and economic hardship can make temporary school uh, temporary school disruption permanent. So climate justice in education therefore means something very concrete. The learners carrying the greatest climate burden school not receive the weakest educational response. Next slide, please. And schools cannot do this alone. There are three actors particularly I want to highlight. First, teachers. Teachers need confidence, not simply content. One-off workshops are not enough. They need sustained professional development, teaching materials, peer networks, and institutional support because you see, there's a lot of changing going on. There is a lot to learn about the climate change. So teachers need to be sustained, and their sustainable professional development is very important. Number second, parents. If a child learns about water conservation or waste management in school, but sees completely different behavior at home, the lesson remains an assignment rather than becoming a norm. And third is the communities. Communities bring something textbooks cannot provide. Real problems with real states. A farmer can explain changing rainfall. A community elder can describe how water availability has changed over decades. A disaster management officer can explain local flood risk, and local business can explain which green skills employers actually needed. So that is when the community itself becomes part of the classroom. Next slide, please. And the encouraging thing is that we already know quite a lot about works. Whole school approaches work better than isolated activities. Sustained teacher development works better than one-off training. Place-based projects are more meaningful when students solve a visible local problem. So preparedness works better when continuity systems are established before a disaster. And green skills programs work better when employers and technical, vocational, and educational training providers help design them. We also know what frequently fails. One-day climate awareness events with no follow-up, climate content added to an already overloaded curriculum, technology programs that assume every learner has a device and reliable internet. Teachers trained once and then left without support, and green certificates that have no connection to actual employment. So whenever we evaluate climate education, we should ask what changed after the program ended. Because sustainability is very important. We should not simply judge how many people attended. Attendance doesn't matter. What changed after that program, that's what matters. Next slide, please. So, okay. Let me return to Pakistan because our experiences demonstrate why this transformation is urgent. The 2022 floods damaged or destroyed near 27,000 schools. Every 2 months after the disaster, more than 2 million children remained without access to school. Then, in September 2024, monsoon flooding in affected approximately 230,000 students demoting more than 1,300. The lesson is very clear. The risk is recurring. It will come again and again. And if risk is recurring, our response cannot remain temporary. We cannot repeatedly build vulnerable schools after disaster and call that resilience. We need to connect 4 areas that are too often managed separately: resilient school infrastructure, disaster risk and continuity planning, curriculum and teacher reform, and green skill pathways. That is how emergency response becomes systematic resilience. Next slide, please. In Pakistan, as I was told that we should prepare our topics with practical examples. So that's why I'm talking more about Pakistan, because I'm also belong to Pakistan. So Pakistan's experience with large-scale ecosystem restoration also offers an important educational lesson. Restoration is not simply about planting trees. It requires ecological knowledge, community participation, monitoring skills, livelihood incentives, and long-term stewardship. And that creates enormous educational potential. Imagine a restoration site becoming a practical classroom. Students can learn ecology and biodiversity. They can study water and soil. They can examine livelihood impacts. They can use maps and remote sensing. And importantly, they can ask a fundamental scientific questions that did the intervention actually work? That question is extremely important. Climate smart education must teach young people not simply to accept environmental claims, but to test them against evidence. That ability to read data, question and assumptions, and verify impacts turns learners from passive recipients of information into evidence-informed problem solvers. Next slide, please. So, in Pakistan, we are not starting from zero. Many of the building blocks already exist. Punjab's Green School Certification Initiative demonstrates the potential for whole school environmental standard scale. The Candle curriculum demonstrates how dedicated climate learning content can be developed for different grade levels. There's a GIZ program in IIM Sciences Climate Awareness Program shows the importance of building capacity within government itself. And then Clean Green School program demonstrates how teachers and students can become environmental champions. So our biggest problem is not necessarily the absence of ideas, it is the absence of connective tissue. How do we connect these programs? Sorry. How do we establish common standards? How do we move from pilots to systems? How do we finance them sustainability? That is the next stage of the challenge. So next slide, please. And this brings me to, and all these challenges bring me to partnerships. Not single ministry, school organizations can deliver climate smart education alone. Education ministry is bringing curriculum, teacher systems, and education patterns. Climate ministry is bringing climate risk information, adaptation priorities, and climate finance connections. Schools and teachers translate policy into everyday practice. Young people and communities contribute local knowledge, lived experiences, co-design, and accountability. So employers and TVT institutions connect learning to actual labor market demand. And then there is technology and artificial intelligence. AI can potentially help translate climate materials, personalize learning, interpret environmental information, and bring sophisticated data into classrooms. But we must be careful. If our climate education innovation requires expensive devices and permanent high-speed internet, it may reach precisely the learners who already have the greatest educational advantages. So innovation must be designed to offline first and equity first. Because a lot of people do not have access to high internet speed, or they do not have access to internet too. So technology should be close the climate learning divide, not widen. Next slide, please. So, okay. Our organizers asked us a very useful question that if you could change one thing about education system today to make them climate ready, what would it be? So my answer is stop measuring. Only what learners know, start enabling what they can do. Because this is the demand of our time. Knowledge remains fundamental, but knowledge that never becomes capability does not create resilience. Imagine a student learning about what. Okay, I'm just few more minutes. I'm just closing it. So Instead of asking an examination questions, the students investigate water consumption in the they collect data, they identify waste. So these and they measure that whether anything changed. So we need this kind of project that the student has suddenly developed science, mathematics, communication, civic participation, teamwork, and problem solving. That is the transformation we need, and from knowledge to capability, and from capability to action. So moving on to the final slide, I will directly because of the time constraint. There's one. Next slide, please. Next slide.
Okay, thank you.
We have
Thank
reached
you.
the final slide.
You know, the name is a bit very hard to pronounce, but I'm trying all my possible best not to pronounce the name. Okay. Thank you very much for that insightful contribution based on the topic. You have done very well. Then I want us to maybe give our audience 2 minutes to ask questions so that we can round up this very important presentation of yours. Thank you. So please, any question from the audience? Any question from the audience, please, so that let's chip in into the presentation. She has said a lot based on the presentation, and she really mean discussion. Any question? So in the absence of the question, I want to thank you very much for this insightful contribution. From our discussion, it's clear that climate smart education must go beyond simple teaching learning about climate changes. It should be equipped, and then it's very important for all of us. So with this, I would like to thank our speaker, Ms. Tahiyat Naeem, for this wonderful presentation of yours. And I would like to say thank you very much. And I wish you all a productive continuation of the forum. Thank you very much. And assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Okay, bye-bye. Okay. So with this, I would like to call the next moderator, or let me hand over to Esther so that she'll come over and then call the next moderator that's going to go with the second session. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Suleiman. I believe some of the panelists for session 1 are still on, so they could also just make their own presentation before session 2. We still have a couple of minutes before session 2 begins. So Walter, I believe you're on the call, and some other speakers for session 1, you could also raise your hand so you could be identified to take a few questions and also present. So over to you, Walter.
Okay, thank you so much for the opportunity, and thank you so much for the incredible speakers who has just gone before me. And thank you so much, Suleiman. Thank you so much to the My Foundation for bringing all this together. So not wasting more time, I'm simply going to tackle the little presentation which I had today. And I'm going to take like only 5 minutes. I'm just going to share my screen. So let me see. Okay. I believe everyone is able to see my screen. So basically about climate smart education. This is one of the topics or one of the learning areas which is very dear to me. And this presentation, I'm borrowing heavily from the past fellowship which I was in with the University of Pennsylvania Graduate School of Education, where basically we are tackling project-based learning towards global climate justice. So with the theme of climate smart education, I'm going to lean it towards like how basically can we achieve climate smart education? And from my previous work, one thing was very evident. Climate smart education can only be achieved if it is leading towards project-based learning. So how basically can educators, can teachers in classrooms, how can they educate learners, not only the theoretical aspect of it, but they can include the projects. So in order for the educators to achieve this, there are 4 main goals which must be taken into place or must be taken into consideration. And those goals include the disciplinary learning. There must be disciplinary learning. Then there must also the authenticity of learning there. I'm going to explain them a little bit. Then there must also be collaborative part of it. There must also be iterative. So what do I mean when I talk about disciplinary learning? Disciplinary learning basically means the educator or the facilitator must ensure that the students or the learners or anybody engaged in the learning process have full understanding of the subject matter within that discipline or outside that discipline. So mastery of the subject matter within the discipline is very key. Like if it's about climate change, the students or the learning parties must first understand what is basically climate change. Understanding of the subject matter is very important. Then the next part is about the authenticity. Learning should not just be tailored towards the classroom. The learning should be more authentic. Like the students should be made to take the real roles. Like if it's about climate change, the student can assume the role of a mathematician. With as a mathematician, they can assume, they can employ the skills like analytical skills, maybe to analyze the changes, let's say the changes in temperature over a given duration of time. They can be able to, like, if they are developing, let's say, a demonstration farm to maybe show other students about climate smart practices, let's say in agriculture. They are able to use those skills like measurements. So the students are picking up real roles. Also, if they are historians, the teacher or the facilitator should not just teach these learners to know history. The main aim there should be, how can these learners be historians? That's very key. With that, by being authentic, it means that these learners they're very able to attach what they are learning to the real roles in the community or from there where they are coming from. Then there is this collaborative part. So from collaboration, this is where sometime back during our discussions, I got very mixed opinions about it. Just by the mere fact that you're working together towards a given project doesn't necessarily mean that you are collaborating. So collaboration basically means you must have a given goal which you are aiming to achieve. And when in a classroom setup, you should motivate students to collaborate. And collaboration should only happen if the problem the learners are seeking to understand, one learner cannot do it alone. This one will help them to work in groups, also to ask questions, be able to make like good choices about the project, give suggestions about what are the possible ways they think that the project they're working on could be the best. Then about iterative, and this one I'm going to read it. So about iterative simply mean, I love this quote, you never learn something by doing it once. You never learn something by doing it once. So even teachers, just because you go to class, teach today, tomorrow, you do it each and every day, that's when you become better at it. But if you just do it once, you don't become better at something. So students should also be given the opportunity to tackle actually real roles, where from real roles, they'll be given time to get feedback. From collaboration, they're able to get feedback by themselves. They are able to do reflections. They're able to come up with different suggestions just to make the project they're working on very authentic. Then about that one, I'll be able to share this because it's a long PDF. So by disciplinary, this one will elicit high order thinking within students. They will be able to think critically about how possibly can we come up with solutions to address the problems affecting us in our communities. The idea is we don't need to teach our students about climate stories that they are not able to relate with. The first thing that you need to ask the student is they should be able to identify the climatic problems from their communities. So that one will elicit high order thinking. Then when we come to authenticity, it supports students to build their personal connection to the work. The students will know, why am I studying mathematics? Or why am I a historian? Why am I doing this? So by developing that personal connection to the work or to the learning, they're becoming more passionate about it. So the learning does not just end in the classroom, but even if they go back to their communities, they are able to explore or implement what they learned in class. So basically, those are the more detailed explanation of the same. And thank you so much for the opportunity. Unless there is any other question.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Walter Tito. It was very informative. And I think our participants can still ask the remaining questions within the chat. And to continue, I will invite Tiwalade Aderemi to continue with their presentation, please.
Tiwalade Aderemi, seems like she's not present. Maybe she's having a network issue. So let's.
Yes.
No, the name is it
Goyu
Nugu
Manuela.
Nuguyu? Is it Nuguyu? Executive Director, People Action of Hope, Cameroon. I don't know whether you are on the line, so that you can give us your own contribution based on the topic. Nuguyu Manuela. We have Zahara Samaila Selami, Youth Representative. Is he present? Esther, it seems like most of the presenters are not present.
It does seem like it. Perhaps they just have connection issues. So perhaps we can check who is present today.
Okay, Muhammad Samaila Sala Abakar is present with us. So, sir, you're welcome to this session. So, please, can you share your own experience based on the topic of discussion of today? Thank you. Muhammad Sala, what do you?
Okay, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I want to share my screen.
Okay.
Is my screen repairing?
We're still waiting for you to open the screen.
Okay, good afternoon for all. I am Muhammad Ismail Saleh Abakar. I am Sudanese. I don't know, please. Okay. Good afternoon for everyone. It is an honor to join CEF 2026. Today, I would like to share one simple message: climate education should not stop awareness. It should help people understand it, make better decisions, and take practical action. The title of my workshop, From Knowledge to Action, Preparing Learners, Resilience, and Climate Adaptive Future. What should climate smart education deliver? When we talk about climate smart education, we should think by one teaching climate change as a theory. Learners need to understand climate risk, interpret climate information and early warning, make information decision, and know what action are appropriate for their communities. The real pathway, climate knowledge and skill development, information decision, and field action and community resilience. Let me share with you my experience, or my experience. Let me share with you example from Sudan. Through work in Eastern and Western Al-Galabat, Gadari said around 200 members of local community were trained on climate risk, seasonal climate forecast, climate information, early warning, preparedness, and adaptation. I also presented seasonal climate forecast to the community and discussed what forecast could mean for their agriculture decision. The objective was not simply to increase knowledge, but to help people as climate information in their everyday decision. Climate education should also create opportunities for direct engagement with community through interactive workshop. We worked with community members to translate complex meteorological information into simple and actionable local plans. We discussed how weather bulletins and warning could reach everyone, including the most vulnerable groups. We also discussed the rules of school, mosque, and local media in raising awareness and communicating climate information. Another important point was stringing coordinating between government and community, because climate information gain really value when it is framed from into decision to protect life and livelihood. Training, climate education, action. This is why climate education become action. The process starts with climate literacy, understanding climate change, weather patterns, and climate information available to community. The next step is risky precipitation, understanding how climate risk might affect agriculture, livelihood, and daily life. There comes adaptive action. From example, communities can use climate information to make decisions about agriculture practicals, including the selection of crops that are more to drought and heat stress. The outcome is not simply more knowledge. The outcome is better informed decision, practical adaptation, and stronger community resilience to climate shock. Learn by on classroom walls. After presenting the seasonal climate, climate before this slide, after presenting the seasonal climate forecast, we discussed the implementation of the accepted climate condition and possible adaptation option. One of the practical response we observed was the use of crop varieties that are more tolerant to drought and heat stress. I am also connecting to follow up with the community to understand how climate information influences their decision and adapting For me, this is what uh hello. Hello, please give me answer if you hear me.
Yes, we can hear you, sir. Continue.
Yes, I can hear you. Please continue.
You have muted yourself. Still muted. Mm-mm. Nothing. You have to unmute yourself on Zoom.
Hello.
Yes, there you go. We can hear you.
Are you hear me?
Yes,
Is
perfect.
my voice is clear? My voice is clear,
Yes, very
but
clear.
not picture. My voice, yes. Okay. So my message, the symbol, my key message symbol, climate education must move from awareness to capability, from capability to action, and from action to resilience. To achieve this, we need stronger connection between school, meteorological surveys, communities, government, and young people. Meteorological surveys and provide climate information and early warning, but people need the knowledge and skill to understand and use the information. The success of climate education is not only what people know, but what they do with what they know. Thank you. I'm so sorry. There are some problem for me. Thank you. Commit. Hello. Hello.
So we can hear you. Please continue.
Okay, the success of climate education is not only what people know, but what they do with what they know. Also, closing message: climate education is not to teaching people about climate change, but what people do with this information. Thank you. The internet connection is poor and the electricity has gone out. Electricity. Gara. Mm.